Greetings, friends, and welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Sean, your host. The website is www.scriptureandprophecy.com, and that's where you go to find the archives. That's where you go to support this mission of truth and devotionals and many other things on that website at scriptureandprophecy.com. That's also, people wonder how they can get in contact with me. That's also how you do it. There's only one way to get in contact with me, and that is through email, sean@truthfed.com. But be aware that I get a lot of emails, and am not always in a position to be able to get to all of them. But that is the only way to contact me. People ask about that a lot. scriptureandprophecy.com, that's where you go to do that. Today we are resuming our study in the ancient book of Enoch. And this particular topic is going to be maybe fascinating to some, but maybe very boring to others. And what we're going to be dealing with for the next 2 weeks in the book of Enoch is dealing with the courses of the heavenly luminaries. Now, when it comes to debating creation versus Babylonian science and flat earth versus, heliocentric, all that stuff, that's not something that I feel led or called to do. I'm a man of the scriptures, and there's a lot of other people out there doing that. If you're interested in that debate, in that conversation, the only thing I will say is that Enoch certainly does not agree with Babylonian science. Enoch describes the sun and moon being the exact same size, and that they go through portals as the seasons go on that take them further out and then bring them back in. And that's how the seasons are described. And he also describes a 364-day year as opposed to what we have now. And so I will say this, I do believe that our calendars and our seasons and times and all of that have definitely been confused by the enemy over the years, over the centuries. And it's really hard to tell what year we really are in. Different calendars. We have even the Hebrew calendar, which is different from the calendar that we go by, is still an argument with other people who have a different view of where the Hebrew calendar should actually be. So it's really hard to say. There are those who think that God has possibly put us on a 6,000-year schedule, and that we're at 5,000 years and something right now, but it's again, hard to say. And so, like I said, I don't really get into those debates. It's just, it goes into endless argument. But just to tell you that, what Enoch describes is not what you're going to learn in your high school or university science class. And so you can do with that whatever you wish. But I will read this for you this morning. We're going to go through chapter 72 through 75. And like I said, it'll probably be 2 weeks that we're working on this because we need to go all the way through to chapter 80 through 82 to get through all the luminary courses and stuff. So probably be 2 weeks of this. So again, for some of you it might be fascinating, and for others maybe not so much. But without further delay, let's go ahead and take a look at what Enoch describes as the courses of the heavenly luminaries. And I will also just say one more thing, that the Bible, on many occasions, likens the stars and angels to being the same. Many times angels are actually described as stars. In the book of Revelation, I saw a great star fall, right? And he had a key to the bottomless pit, that kind of stuff. Just throwing that out there. All right. Let's begin. The ancient book of Enoch, starting with chapter 72. The book of the courses of the luminaries of heaven. The relations of each according to their classes, their dominion and their sessions, and their seasons, according to their names and places of origin, and according to their months, which Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, who is their guide, showed me, and showed me all their laws exactly as they are, and how it is with regard to all the years of the world, and unto eternity, till the new creation is accomplished, which dureth till eternity. I will just point out that Enoch also agrees with the book of Revelation that there will be a brand new creation, that'll be an eternal creation, because the scriptures teach that the world we're living in now is going to burn and pass away, but there will be a new creation, a new eternal creation, and those of us who have trusted in the Messiah, in the Lord Jesus Christ, will receive eternity in that new creation. Continuing on, verse 2. And this is the first law of the luminaries. The luminary, the sun, has its rising in the east portals of heaven, and its setting in the western portals of the heaven. And I saw 6 portals in which the sun rises, and 6 portals in which the sun sets, and the moon rises and sets in these portals. And the leaders of the stars, and those whom they lead, 6 in the east and 6 in the west, and all following each other in accurately corresponding order. Also many windows to the right and left of these portals. And first there goes forth the great luminary, named the sun. And his circumference is like the circumference of the heaven, and he is quite filled with the illuminating and heating fire. The chariot on which he ascends, the wind drives, and the sun goes down from the heaven and returns through the north, in order to reach the east, and is so guided that he comes to the appropriate portal and shines in the face of the heaven. In this way he rises in the first month in the great portal, which is the fourth, those 6 portals in the cast. And in that 4th portal from which the sun rises in the first month are 12 window openings, from which proceed a flame when they are opened in their season. When the sun rises in the heaven, he comes forth through that 4th portal 30 mornings in succession, and sets accurately in the 4th portal in the west of the heaven. And during this period the day becomes daily longer, and the night nightly shorter to the 13th morning. On that day, the day is longer than the night by a 9th part, and the day amounts exactly to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts. And the sun rises from that portal and sets in the 4th and returns to the 5th portal of the east 30 mornings, and rises from it and sets in the 5th portal. And then the day becomes longer by 2 parts, and amounts to 11 parts, and the night becomes shorter, and amounts to 7 parts. And it returns to the east and enters into the 6th portal, and rises and sets in the 6th portal, 1:30 mornings on account of its sign. On that day the day becomes longer than the night, and the day becomes double the night, and the day becomes 12 parts, and the night is shortened and becomes 6 parts. And the sun mounts up to make the day shorter and the night longer. And the sun returns to the east and enters into the 6th portal, and rises from it and sets 30 mornings. And when 30 mornings are accomplished, the day decreases by exactly 1 part, and becomes 11 parts, and the night 7. And the sun goes forth from the 6th portal in the west, and goes to the east, and rises in the 5th portal for 30 mornings, and sets in the west again in the 5th western portal. On that day the day decreases by 2 parts, and the amounts to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts. And the sun goes forth from the 5th portal and sets in the 5th portal of the west, and rises in the 4th portal for 1:30 mornings, on account of its sign, and it sets in the west. On that day the day is equalized with the night and becomes of equal length, and the night amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts. And the sun rises from that portal and sets in the west, and returns to the east, and rises 30 mornings in the 3rd portal, and sets in the west in the 3rd portal. And on that day the night becomes longer in the day, and the night becomes longer than the night, and the day shorter than day till the 13th morning. And the night amounts exactly to 10 parts, and the day to 8 parts. And the sun rises from the 3rd portal and sets in the 3rd portal in the west, and returns to the east, and for 30 morning rises in the 2nd portal in the east, and in like manner sets in the second portal in the west of heaven. And on that day the night amounts to 11 parts, and the day to 7 parts. And the sun rises on the day from the second portal and sets in the west in the second portal, and returns to the east into the first portal for 31 mornings, and sets in the first portal in the west of heaven. And on that day the night becomes longer and amounts to double of the day, and the night amounts exactly to 12 parts, and the day to 6. And the sun has therewith traversed the divisions of his orbit, and turns again to those divisions of his orbit, and enters that portal 30 mornings, and sets also opposite to it. So what seems like Enoch's describing that the sun goes through each one of these portals. There's 12 of them. And as it moves through the portals, the days get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter till it gets to where the night is longer than the day, and then starts to reverse, which is is basically what we see through the seasons, right? Like right now, it's becoming wintertime. The days are getting shorter, the nighttime's getting longer, and it's getting colder, almost like the sun's further away from us, right? Verse 28. And on that night, the night has decreased in its length by a 9th part, and the ninth has become 7 parts, or 11 parts, and the day 7 parts. And the sun has returned and entered into the second portal in the east, and returns on those divisions of its orbit for 30 mornings, rising and setting. And so now he's describing its way back. So it's went all the way out to the first portal, and now it's coming all the way back in. Verse 30. On that day the night decreases in length, and the night amounts to 10 parts, and the day to 8. And on that day the sun rises from the portal and sets in the west, and returns to the east, and rises in the third portal for 31 mornings, and sets in the west of the heavens. On that day the night decreases, and the amount to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts. And the night is equal to the day, and the year is exactly as it is to its days, 364. So there he is describing a 364-day year. And the length of the day of the night, and the shortness of the day and the night arise. Through the course of the sun, these distinctions are made. So it comes that in the course becomes daily longer, and its course nightly shorter. And this is the law in the course of the sun, and his return as often as he returns 60 times and rises, the great luminary which is named the sun forever and ever. And that which thus rises is a great luminary, and is so named according to its appearance, according to as the Lord commanded. As he rises, so he sets, and decreases not, and rests not, but burns day and night, and his light is 7-fold brighter than that of the moon. But as regards to size, they are both equal. So there's Enoch describing that yes, the sun burns brighter, 7-fold brighter than the moon does, but that they are both of equal size, according to Enoch. Chapter 73, verse 1. And after this law I saw another law dealing with a smaller luminary, which is named the moon. And her circumference is like the circumference of heaven, and her chariot in which she rides is driven by the wind, and the light is given to her in definite measure. And her rising and setting change every month, and her days are like the days of the sun, and when her light is uniform, it amounts to the 7th part of the light of the sun. In other words, when the moon is full, it's 1/7 of the brightness of the sun. Verse 4. And thus she rises in her first phase, and the east comes forth on the 13th morning, and on that day she becomes visible, and constitutes for you the first phase of the moon on the 13th day, together with the sun in the portal where the sun rises. And the 1/2 of her goes forth by a 7th part, and her whole circumference is empty, without light, and the exception of 1/7 part of it, and the 14th part of her light. And when she receives 1/7 part of the half of her light amounts to 1/7 part on the half thereof. And she sets with the sun, and when the sun rises, the moon rises with him, and receives the half of 1 part of light, and in the night, the beginning of her morning, in commencement of the lunar day, the moon sets with the sun, and is invisible that night with the 14th part and the half of 1 of them. And she rises on the day with exactly 7th part, and comes forth and recedes from the rising of the sun, and in her remaining days she becomes bright in the remaining 13th part. Chapter 74. And I saw another course, a law for her, and how according to that law she performs her monthly revolution. And all these Uriel, the holy angel who is the leader of them all, showed to me, and their positions, and I wrote down their positions as she showed them to me. And I wrote down their months as they were, and the appearance of their light till the 15th days were accomplished. In single seventh parts she accomplishes all her light in the east, and in single seventh parts accomplishes all her darkness in the west. And in certain months she alters her settings, and in certain months she pursues her own peculiar course. In 2 months the moon sets with the sun, in those 2 middle portals, the 3rd and the 4th. She goes forth for 7 days and turns about and returns again through the portal where the sun rises and accomplishes all her light. And she recedes from the sun, and in the 8th day enters in the 6th portal from which the sun goes forth. And when the sun goes forth from the 4th portal, she goes forth 7 days until she goes forth from the 5th and turns back again in the 7 days into the 4th portal and accomplishes all her light, and she recedes and enters into the 1st portal in 8 days. And she returns again in 7 days into the 4th portal from which the sun goes forth. Thus I saw their position, how the moons rose and the sun set in those days. And if 5 years are added together, the sun has an overplus of 30 days, and all the days which occur to it for one of those 5 years, when they are full, amount to 364 days. And the overplus of the sun and the stars amount to 6 days. In 5 years, 6 days, every year come to 30 days, and the moon falls behind the sun, and the stars to the number of 30 days. And the sun and the stars bring in all the years exactly, so that they do not advance or delay their position by a single day unto eternity, but complete these years with perfect justice in 364 days. In 3 years there are 1,092 days, and in 5 years there is 1,820 days, so that in 8 years there are 2,912 days. For the moon alone, the days amount in 3 years to 1,062 days, and in 5 years she falls 50 days behind, i.e. the sum of 1,770, there is to be added 1,062 days. And in 5 years there are 1,770 days, so that for the moon the days in 8 years amount to 2,832 days. For in 8 years she falls behind to the amount of 80 days. All the days she falls behind in 8 years are 80. And the year is accurately completed in conformity with their world stations and the stations of the sun, which rise from the portals through which the sun rises and sets 30 days. Chapter 75. And the leaders of the heads of the thousands who are placed over the whole creation, over all the stars, have also to do with the 4 intercalary days, being inseparable from their office according to the reckoning of the year. And these render service of 4 days which are not reckoned in the reckoning of the year. And owing to them men grow wrong therein. For the luminaries truly render service on the world stations, 1 in the 1st portal, 1 in the 3rd portal of heaven, 1 in the 4th portal, and 1 in the 6th portal, and the exactness of the year is accomplished through separate 364 stations. Enoch, it seems like, is pointing out that men err when they're trying to understand this, trying to understand the length of a year. He says, and owing to them men go wrong therein. Interesting. Verse 3. For the signs and the times and the years and the days and the angel Uriel showed to me, whom the Lord of glory hath set forever over all the luminaries of heaven, in the heaven and in the world, that they should rule on the face of heaven, and be seen of the earth, and to be leaders for the day and the night, the sun, the moon, and stars, and all ministering creatures which make the revolution, and all the chariots of heaven. In like manner, 12 doors Uriel showed me, open in the circumference of the sun's chariot in the heaven, through which the rays of the sun break forth, and from them is warmth diffused over the earth, when they are opened at their appointed seasons. That's interesting. So Enoch's describing that the sun has like these doors that open up that allow those like rays of heat to come out at appointed times. And for the winds and the spirit and dew when they are open, standing open in the heavens at the ends. As for the 12 portals in the heaven, at the ends of the earth, out which go forth the sun, the moon, and stars, and all the works of heaven in the east and in the west. There are many windows open to the left and to the right of them, and the window at its appointed season produce warmth corresponding as these do, to those doors from which the stars come forth according as he has commanded them, and wherein they set corresponding to their numbers. And I saw chariots in heaven running in the world above those portals, in which revolve the sun that never set. And one is larger than all the rest, and it is that makes its course through the entire world. All right, and we are going to stop right there. And we'll do chapter 76 through 82 the next time. So that's what Enoch is describing, is how it all works, and how the sun and the moon work, and the luminaries. And again, we've still got another week's worth of reading to read to see what else he has to say about these things. And of course, the Bible tells us very clearly the purpose of the sun, moon, and stars. So regardless of what science tells us, what NASA tells us, what any of these things are, regardless of that debate or those arguments about these things, the scriptures are very clear the point of the creation of the stars and the moon and the sun. In Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 through 15, it says, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven, to give light upon the earth. And it was so." So God tells us the very point. The point is to separate the day from the night, and for those things to be signs for us to determine the seasons and days and years, and to give light in the heavens, to light upon the earth. Well, there you have today's study. And like many of these studies, when we're looking into things like this, sometimes they raise more questions than answers, for which I think is a good thing, because it stirs up the mentality that I love the most, which is that seeking of truth mentality. Regardless of what I've been told, I want to at least seek the truth. The scriptures say that and I'm going to paraphrase, but if a man answers anything before he's studied it himself, he's a fool. There's a lot of fools in the world today. So there you have it. That's what Enoch has to say about how the sun and the moon work. And I'll let you be the judge of all that. That's all I have for you this morning. Lord willing, I'll be back with you later on this week with our prophets portion and our Torah portion studies. Peace and grace be with all of you, and until next time, God bless.